So this Sunday, we are starting a new sermon series, and we're starting a new sermon series partly based on this book called Becoming a Future-Ready Church, which is by a few people who study churches, who study religion in the United States and how things are changing, how things have changed, how things have to change if the church wants to keep going the way that it has. And there was a nice bit of serendipity a couple weeks ago when I was talking to Steve Thayer, because he brought up in his interview the vitality that this church, that First Congregational United Church of Christ, had 20 or 30 years ago. And this particular book in the introduction has this quote. We can go to the next slide and start. It's hard to overstate how much has changed in the world of religion in just the last 30 years. In 1972, which was more than 30 years ago, only 5% of all Americans claimed no religious affiliation. By 2021, just a few years ago, that number had risen to 28%. Among members of Generation Z, those born between 1997 and 2012, at least 40% describe themselves as atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular, the nones. However, these shifts are not merely a story about young people leaving religion behind. In 2008, 17% of baby boomers, those born between 1946 and 1964, reported no religious affiliation. By 2023, that number had risen to 28%. So it is true that the religious landscape of America has changed. There used to be surprisingly few people who were nothing in particular, who listed their religion as nothing in particular, who did not even check a box, and now it is almost a quarter of the population. An increasing number of people just don't think very much about church. Just don't think very much about Christianity, just don't think very much about this story, just don't think very much about religion in general. But it is also true that that's not the only thing that has changed in 30 years. So I thought we would do a little quiz to see if you can remember 30 years ago and what has changed. So I want you to picture it. It's 1996. I have just graduated from high school. I am on my way to college. If we can go to the next slide and start the quiz. In 1996, the number one song in the country was what? Anybody? You listened to the radio. You know this song. It was the Macarena. How about the number one movie of 1996? It is a classic. It is beloved. You probably all watched it last week. So I'm hearing Star Wars, but Star Wars Independence Day. How about the number one TV show? 1996. Sorry? Okay, I got Seinfeld and Lucy. 1996. Seinfeld is close. I think that was maybe number 4, Friends. That's what a lot of people think, right? Friends. Can we get the answer? ER. Friends had only been on for about a year, maybe 2. so it hadn't quite risen to that #1 spot. I didn't grab these, but I looked at like the top 5. So Frasier was #2. It had been on for a while. Friends was on there. I think it was tied for 5th. 4th, I believe, was Suddenly Susan, if you have a vague memory of that show. The other one tied for 5th was a show I had simply never heard of before. And I was watching TV at the time, so. How about this? We'll go to the next one. What was the top search engine in 1996? Anyone? Give us the answer. Oh, we heard web crawler. AOL.com. Followed by Alta Vista, web crawler, and Yahoo. Google was still 2 years away from being released. So the search engine that all y'all use, probably all the time, wasn't even out yet. How about the top video rental service? How did you rent your videos? Blockbuster, very good. Okay, we've got one solidly. Netflix, which is one of the most popular today, would not be launched until 1998. And when it was launched, anybody remember what Netflix did in 1998? Yeah, they mailed you DVDs. The streaming service, that thing we're so used to now, was launched in 2007. So not even 10 years ago. How about the top social media network in 1996? When you wanted to talk to your friends online, when you wanted to post your memes, what did you use? Okay, I hear Microsoft as a social media network. MySpace, okay. The answer is there wasn't one. Social media, or at least what we recognize as social media, did not exist in 1996. You could make a website on GeoCities if you wanted to, but there wasn't even MySpace yet. Facebook, which of course we all know and love, was founded in 2004 and was not released to the public until 2006. So Facebook is about 20 years old. Okay, now some easier questions. Chess champion Garry Kasparov was defeated by what? A computer. Anybody know the name of the computer? Watson, you're close. Almost. It's on the tips of your tongues. Can we see the Deep Blue? Deep Blue in 1996 was the pinnacle of what we call artificial intelligence. It was not artificial intelligence. What we have today is not artificial intelligence, but we called it that. Kasparov later beat Deep Blue, so wasn't that great? This is a fun one. The novel, Blank, which would later become a successful television series, debuted. Anyone got an idea? It's got a sequel series out right now, or a prequel series maybe?
Little House on the Prairie.
1996, a little late for Little House. Yep, I heard it. Game of Thrones. How about this? The Summer Olympics, which included a tragic attack, were held in... So I heard the answer. Somebody had the answer. Atlanta, yeah. So Munich was, yeah. But if you remember the attacks at the Olympics in the U.S., Atlanta, Georgia. Two questions that come a little closer to home. First Congregational had a membership of, anybody know what our membership was in 1996? Anybody want to hazard a guess?
Over 400.
Okay, we've got over 400. Who says more than 400? Couple. Who says fewer than 400? Okay, let's get the answer. It was 345 was our membership. Today, our membership is 175. And First Congregational had an average weekly attendance of, in 1996, how many people do you think were here on an average Sunday morning? 90, okay. 120. 162. Today, our average attendance is around 35. So that's a really good job on the quiz. We remembered some, we didn't remember others. But 1996 was a surprisingly long time ago. It was a very, very different world. It was a very, very different place. There was no social media. There was really barely an internet. We watched TV on the 3 major networks, plus maybe a few other things on cable if we had them. We got our news differently, we experienced life differently, we gathered in person differently, and a lot more people showed up to churches. And as you got from that first quote, a lot of things have changed in the world and for churches. And I know it's easy to think that it's just us, but I'm telling you, most churches, most places have problems. There are fewer people showing up, and even the big churches, even the huge churches, even the churches that you look at and go, wow, it would be amazing to be that, are just behind the curve. Everything that we are experiencing, they will experience eventually. Because people are just living differently than we used to. When there's religious change, it is easy to think that the reason that there is religious change is because people are getting pushed out of the religious communities that they were part of. That it is because people are getting pushed out of churches. They're not finding a home in the church. If the church would just be different, if it would just return to the traditions that it used to have, if it would just catch up with the way things are, if it would just be more closed or more open, if it would just be more exclusive or more inclusive, if it would just have all the music on organ or all the music on guitar, that would do it. Because people are so desperate to come to church, they just can't find the place. It's just not matching what they really deeply want. But the truth is that when people leave the church, increasingly when people have never been to church, increasingly when people have never even thought about church, it is because all of those needs that they have, all of those needs that they feel like they have, are being met somewhere else. We find community elsewhere. Why do we need to show up on a Sunday morning? Our kids learn elsewhere. Why do I need to show up on a Sunday morning? I have my friends elsewhere. I have my activities elsewhere. I get my spiritual fulfillment elsewhere. Why do I need to show up on a Sunday morning? On Sunday morning, I could go to brunch with my friends. On Sunday morning, I could sleep in. On Sunday morning, we could go out for a hike with the family. On Sunday morning, the kids have yet another sporting event or another non-sporting event. Of all the things we could do on a Sunday morning, why would we go to a church that doesn't offer us very much at all? At least not much that I'm not getting elsewhere. If I want to hear a sermon, I'll hop on YouTube. It's fine. If I want to get care for my soul, I'll go see a therapist. It's fine. If I want to find a community, I'll go to Reddit, or to Facebook, or to Twitter, or to Blue Sky, or to yoga, or to the gym, or to brunch. There's so many more options. It's not, you see, about being pushed out of something. It's about just being pulled toward something else. And people increasingly are pulled towards a different understanding of the world, a different understanding of what community is, a different understanding of how community works. And one of the pieces there is how spirit works, how soul works, how spirituality works. That it is not as much about hearing a lesson or sitting in a pew or singing the songs, but about being reconnected to ourselves, to others, maybe even possibly something a little bit beyond us. Young people more strongly connect mental health with spirituality than previous generations. For many of them, spiritual spaces and safe spaces are one and the same. Therefore, their idea of belonging, perhaps more than previous generations, is strongly connected to feeling safe in places sensitive to mental health issues. And that one line in there isn't quite right, I think. Spiritual spaces and safe spaces are one and the same. I think that it is much more that safe spaces and spiritual spaces are one and the same. It is much more that people younger than me seek out those spaces where they feel whole, where they feel included, where they feel seen. And other spaces are doing that. And in those spaces is where they find the spiritual, where they feel that connection. Our reading today is from the book of Ruth. Ruth is a fantastic book of the Bible. It's one of my absolute favorites. Naomi and her husband and her sons, because of a famine, go elsewhere. And while they are there, Naomi's sons get married to locals, to Moabites, to, if you remember your Bible, those people. And then her husband dies and her sons die, and it is just Naomi and Orpah and Ruth. And Naomi's thinking, there's nothing left here. Orpah, Ruth, go home. Go back to your people. Go out there. Have your needs met out there. I'm going to go back to my people. Maybe we'll meet up again sometime in the future, but probably not. We'll go to our own spaces and the things that work for us. And Orpah says, yeah, okay, nice, see you later. But Ruth holds on. It is easy to think of membership in anything as a name on a list. Our membership used to be huge. Our attendance used to be big. It is easy to think of membership as a name on a list or a Sunday morning in a sanctuary, but Ruth is showing us that it is something else. Because Ruth could just as well go home and put her name back on that list and worship the way that they worship and do things the way that they do things. But no, Ruth has a connection with someone, and Ruth is saying, I am throwing my lot in here. with you. So I'm going to follow you home. I'm going to go where you go. Your people are now my people. Your God is now my God. Where you die, I will die. And this is maybe the thing about being part of something. And maybe a thing that so many churches have lost, that so many religious communities have lost, that so many groups have lost. Ruth is saying to Naomi, you are my ride or die. How many of us say that to each other anymore? How many of us can say to a group, I am with you, hell or high water? I will travel where you travel. I will do what you do. I will be part of your thing no matter what. That is what Ruth is doing. That is maybe possibly what a church can be. That is maybe possibly what a community can be. That group of people who will show up. Not just on Sunday morning, but all the time for each other. That group of people who, when they hear that one of them is in the hospital, immediately goes to visit. That when they hear that somebody is having trouble, immediately shows up with food and a shoulder to cry on. That hears when somebody is having a celebration, that immediately shows up to celebrate with them. With those noisemakers and the party hats. Who joy in each other's joys and sorrow in each other's sorrows. Who are part of something bigger than themselves. Not just names on a list or people in a pew on a Sunday morning. But a community that is larger. But more than that, and more powerfully than that, Ruth isn't just joining Naomi's people. Ruth is going to change Naomi's people. Ruth is going home, and she's going to have to make a life, and it's going to be hard, and there is some trickery. It's a fun story. But eventually, Ruth is going to be part of that people, and Ruth is going to bear a son. Who is going to bear a son? Who is going to bear a son? Who is going to overthrow the king of Israel and become king himself. Ruth is David's great-grandmother. And by being that, simply by showing up, transforms the entire history of Israel. Saul will be gone, David will be in place. And more than that, Ruth is an ancestor of the God who comes into the world as one of us to redeem all humanity. If Ruth had not pitched in, if Ruth had not said, you're my ride or die, if Ruth had not said, I am coming with you, I'm going to be part of your community, who knows what would have happened? Surely God had a plan B, but who knows what would have happened? Our history is our history because Ruth showed up. And that is the thing. When people join a group, when people join a community, when people become part of something, they change the something that they have become a part of. Each and every one of you has changed this church. And that means that each and every one of us needs to be open to the possibility, needs to be excited about the possibility that every new person might change this church. I want to end with this, because this is a vital piece, an important piece, a critical piece. Membership is not just about showing up. It's not just about a name on a list. It's about being part of something and letting something be part of us. It is about inviting other people to be part of something and letting those other people become part of us in fullness. It is not about hoping that people will be pushed out of wherever they are and wander into our space, but about making a space that pulls people in, making a community that pulls people in, being able to say, here we are, don't you want a piece of this? If we can go to the next. Churches would be negligent if they tried addressing membership and attendance without thinking deeply about how they have or have not provided transparent spaces for people to negotiate and renegotiate religious belonging and to explore their own identity formation. And for many reasons. Some millennials and Gen Z never perceived that the church would be a place for discovering these things for themselves. I know I complain sometimes that we live in kind of a consumer culture where people look for the church that they want to belong to, the church that they want to be a part of. If they look for a church at all, we're looking for the thing that is ready-made for us, that we can just slip into without having to change. But the truth is that many of us, folks my age, folks who are younger, are looking for a place where we can be, but not be left as we are looking for a place where we can explore and learn and grow and change and become something more. And YouTube is not going to provide that. And Facebook is not going to provide that. And Reddit is not going to provide that. And most things are not going to provide that. But there is this amazing possibility of a community that will provide that. That will say, come be part of something bigger than yourself. Come and help make something bigger than yourself. Come and be changed by something bigger than yourself. Come and change something bigger than yourself. And if we can do that, if we can be brave enough to do that, if we can be daring enough to do that, then maybe, just possibly, this community can be a place that changes lives and that lets itself be changed by the lives of others. A place where membership is not about being a name on a list or a body on a Sunday morning, but a part of the very body of Christ, abiding in the God who is love. That might just be something exciting enough to pull people in.